Good evening, everybody, and welcome to, on behalf of the Bremhill Parish History Group, to the first event in our History Festival 2020, which is not quite as we'd planned it originally, but nonetheless is going to be great fun. We've got 4 talks, as you're probably aware. This is the first one, which Lank has kindly offered to give, all about the Wilts Berks Canal. The format is going to be that Alan will talk for about 15 minutes or so, and he'll have some material to show on the screen. I'd ask you to mute your microphones when he's speaking, just in case there's any strange noises, dogs barking, etc. that occur. And then you can all unmute and we'll have questions and a discussion and wrap up. So with that, I shall hand over to Alan and look forward to your talk. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Martin. Good evening, everybody. Unusual circumstances. This is, I've got to be honest, this is actually the first time I've given a talk on online, but hopefully we'll see how it goes. So the Wilts Berks Canal, which is what I'm an active member of, it was built in the late 1700s, early 1800s, and it was all started at this place here, which I'm sure you will recognise. Sorry, just go back there. It's the old town hall of Wootton Bassett, that is now Royal Wootton Bassett, of course. And that was in 1793 when the Earl of Peterborough set up a meeting to get people interested in in building a canal. And as you can see, 28 gentlemen. Sorry, ladies. World was even more sexist then than it is now. The 28 gentlemen appointed as committee of management, and the Whitworth father and son, Robert and William, were appointed as engineers. It's quite interesting that the father there, he was actually senior engineer on the Leeds and Liverpool at the same time, and so he left his son to deal with the Wilts and Berks. But the Act of Parliament took place in 1795, and it's actually the Act of Parliament. You know, we call it the Wilts and Berks Canal. I have been asked or introduced many occasions as the Wiltshire and Berkshire Canal. It's not. It is the Wilts and Berks, and it is by Act of Parliament, because the story is that when the Act of Parliament was going through, it obviously went through various drafts. And in those days, the acts were drafted out by hand, and the story is that the clerk in Parliament, lazy it, got a bit fed up with writing, so he abbreviated Wiltshire and Berkshire to Wilts and Berks, and so it is the Wilts and Berks by Act of Parliament, no less. The irony of that is that today the canal doesn't go anywhere near Berkshire because of boundary changes. It is Oxfordshire. Wiltshire and Oxfordshire. But that law passed. 1796, the company moved forward and started to build. So, which prompts the question: why was it built? Well, canals were introduced in the. You can go back to the history of canals, but they were introduced to transport goods. Going back 200, 300 years. How did you move goods around? And it was basically by horse and cart or Shanks's pony. And you can imagine 300 years ago, the tracks that they had to move horses and carts on were pretty muddy and pretty horrible, you know, especially in the winter. You were lucky if you had a good track, you had a good horse and a good cart, you could pull about a ton. To put that in context, the bags of building material you see on the side of the roads, they are about half a ton. So there wasn't a lot of goods that you could move. There were a lot of shippers were bringing goods in. Obviously, Britain was then a very major international trading country, and a lot of companies were bringing their ships in, basically to taking their goods to London, but they didn't like going up the Channel. Basically, the Napoleonic Wars had just finished, so they wanted to they were still a bit nervous about going up the Channel, so they tended to take the goods into the West Country ports, and Bristol obviously was a very large port in those days. So that meant they had to get their goods from Bristol to London. Again, horse and cart was the original answer, but not ideal. And it was decided, it was discovered that many years ago, that canals were a much better way of shipping, transporting goods. And that was actually all started by a gentleman called Josiah Wedgwood. He used to obviously manufacture his goods in the pottery towns, and it was then shipped by horse and cart to Liverpool docks, where it was shipped from there onwards around the world. Now, normally at this stage, I throw a question out to the audience and say, what percentage of goods got to Liverpool intact? But obviously, we're a little bit restricted on that one today. But the answer to that question is about 90 to 95% of his crockery, pottery, was smashed by the time it got to Liverpool. So obviously not ideal, and he wanted to find a way of resolving this problem. So he built, he basically funded the Trent and Mersey Canal, and then from there went on and obviously became a very, very successful and wealthy man. So that's really what started canals. Moving back down south, the Bristol to London canal was required. There was a requirement to take coal from the Somerset coalfields out to markets in places like Bradford, Chippenham, Melksham, Calne, places like that, and onwards up to more into the Midlands. So there were different requirements for different canals. The main aim of the Wilts Berks was to transport the coal from Somerset coalfields, but also to provide this link from Bristol to London. Now, I hear you all saying that, well, hang on a minute, what about the Kennet and Avon? And yes, the Kennet and Avon was very much under consideration and under construction at the same sort of time. The problem with the Kennet and Avon was a little town called Devizes. I'm sure you all know it. And of course, there is a bit of an obstacle to canals in Devizes. It's called Cane Hill. So they realised that the Wilts Berks was a serious threat to Devizes, and they were going to lose a lot of revenue from that. So the Devizes Council actually funded the Cane Hill flight of locks. Both canals were finished in 1810, and subsequently the Kennet and Avon became the successful canal it was. The Wilts Berks was never that successful. In fact, its most successful period came in the mid-1800s, when a gentleman called Brunel, Isambard Kingdom Brunel, came along with this idea that railways were going to be far more effective than canals, which of course they were. But he did realise that canals and railways have something in common. They both need flattish land, and so he realised that the line for his railway should basically follow the line of the Wilts Berks Canal. And I hope you can all see my mouse here. But you see Abingdon, the Wilts Berks goes from Semmington down here all the way up to Abingdon on the Thames. And you can see that sort of from Wantage all the way down to really Chippenham, the railway, which is that black line there, it follows the line of the Wilts Berks Canal. And the other benefit to Brunel was that when you're building a canal, when you're building a railway, you need materials to get to site. And so he realised, again, there's a canal right there, so he could use the canal to his benefit. He actually did this with the Kennet and Avon as well, the railway down to Malmesbury, not Malmesbury, the southwest. I can't remember the name of the place, but that also follows the line of the Kennet and Avon. So you know, it benefited there. The big problem for the canal, came that as soon as the railway was finished, the money dried up, there weren't any tolls, everybody decided to go onto the railway, and so the Wilts and Berks lost a massive amount of traffic, and so from being very profitable, it was deemed to be fall into decline, and hence we have the situation now where we have a derelict canal. One of the things was that the Kennet and Avon was actually bought by the Great Western Railway, and so it was always owned by the railway company. They did offer to buy the Wilts and Berks, but that was turned down for some reason, and that is the main reason why in 1914 the canal was abandoned by Act of Parliament, whereas the Kennet and Avon was easy to restore. So moving back, falling tolls, new owners. Well, the commercial syndicate was actually an organisation of shareholders. They took over. They failed. And then in 1901, a stormy Sunday evening in January 1901 saw the demise of the canal completely, when the Stanley Aqueduct, which I'm sure you all know where it is, fairly close, that collapsed in this storm. And as we all know, if you take the plug out of a bath, all the water drains away. If you do the same on a canal, the same thing happens, just a lot more water. Luckily, the aqueduct goes over the River Marden, so there was minimal, as I understand it, was minimal damage to any property, just a little bit of flooding on the farmland. These pictures, I'm told they're taken around about 1970. I've heard people saying they're earlier or later and so on. But as you can see, the west side in the right-hand picture here, the west side collapsed completely, and the aqueduct has now been demolished. But that basically finished off the canal, because there is no water in that section of canal. There's no through route. There was no inclination or finance to repair the aqueduct, and that was basically the end of the story. The canal continued in operation until 1914, when Swindon, this tiny little town, or sort of tiny little village originally of Swindon, which had obviously grown up because of the canal and the railway, Swindon Council realised, or they grow to dislike this abandoned sewer, stagnant sewer running through their town. So they applied to Parliament for an act of abandonment, and that was granted in 1914. And that was basically the end of the canal. As you can see, ownership passed to local authorities, and the canal track was left to face its fate. And that was basically the end of the story. Luckily for us, a certain gentleman called Jack Dalby came along, and he had an interest in the lost waterways of Britain, and he'd heard about this abandoned Wiltshire waterway, and he went and investigated it and wrote this little booklet, the Wilts and Berks Canal. That gained interest, or garnered interest from people who formed the Wilts and Berks amenity group with the intention of preserving what was left. As you can see here, you've got various different structures. Double bridge up here at Laycock, that was pretty much gone. It's in danger of collapsing. Same with a lot of the other structures there. But then in 1990s, 2000, they decided that what's the point in preserving a pile of bricks in the country that nobody's going to see? They then moved forward to restore the whole canal, and so that they changed the structure of the organisation. It became a registered charity, the Wilts and Berks Canal Trust, and the plan is to move forward with complete restoration. As I said, the problem we have is that because the canal was abandoned by Act of Parliament, all the land went back to the original owners. And so what we have to do is to firstly get hold of the land from the current owners. Some, as you can imagine, some owners are quite willing to work with us, and some are very cooperative with us. In fact, in some cases, Wiltshire Council, for instance, they have handed over, transferred the ownership of the land to us to work with us. Some people want to get what they can for it. Other people, over my dead body type scenario. But we are working with the various landowners and hope to we will get there in the end. We have solutions to all the problems. This is a major infrastructure problem, as you can imagine. We're not able to do this all on our own as a small canal trust. So we are part of the Wiltshire, Swindon and Oxfordshire Canal Partnership, and as you can see, we've got quite a few significant organisations involved in that. So where are we today? Restoration is underway. Many small-scale restorations have been completed. The canal is basically a dotted line, whereas it should be a solid blue line all the way up. It is a dotted line where we're able to get hold of the land and then restore it. Things like down at Peterborough, we've got a mile of canal restored there in full operation. In fact, weather or canal water levels permitting and COVID permitting, we do run boat trips there during the summer. Obviously, it's all a little bit difficult at the moment. We've got various bigger projects like the what we call the Melksham link between the Kennet and Avon and Melksham. That's a completely new stretch of canal which is going through the planning stage. And then we have things like the significant blockages like the M4. We've got to cross the M4 at some point. We're working with that. We're actually actively working on a project to tunnel under the M4. So hopefully that won't be too far in the distance. Why do we want to restore it? When it was originally built as an industrial trading route, well, we're not restoring it as a trading route. It is, fairly obviously, canals are big business these days. A lot of people use them for leisure purposes, for holidays, for sightseeing. This is going to be a 70-mile blue-green corridor, so there's a lot of wildlife there. Again, looking at the Peterborough stretch, we dredged a 400-yard section a few years ago, and within a couple of weeks it had filled up naturally. It was become home to coots, ducks, swans and kingfishers, so I don't think we're doing it too wrong. Economic development. I mentioned Devizes Council restoring or funding the building of the Cane Hill Flight of Locks. Just to give you an idea of economic development there, Devizes, the Cane Hill Flight of Locks and the Kennet and Avon Canal brings in about £10 million a year into the Devizes economy. So there is big business there. We also do a lot of work with the community. This was back in 2014, which was just to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the abandonment of the canal, and we got all the local groups. We had an open weekend down at Peterborough. We got a local schools along, and we were working with them, teaching them to some of the skills involved in building and restoring canals. Hopefully these youngsters will soon be coming of age so that they can come and help us with the work, but teaching them bricklay, woodwork and skills like that. And the great thing was to see the smiles on their faces as they were walking away. And of course we do own the Peterborough Arms, which is now fully open. Well, again, COVID permitting, is fully open, A, as a pub, and B, as the Dauncey Lock Canal Centre. It's the headquarters of the Canal Trust these days, but we are intending to have a museum and canal centre there in due course when we get access to the land. For those of you who know that part of the world, the canal is restored for about 1 kilometre either side of the pub. Unfortunately for us, it's in private ownership, so it's not accessible to the public. So that's the introduction. As I said, that's the line of the canal and the various projects we've got going on it. That's as far as I intend going today. But if anybody's got any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer them.
Alan, thank you very much indeed. That's most interesting. Can I ask everybody to unmute, or those who want to ask a question to unmute themselves? And if you unshare your screen, Alan, then we can see who's asking questions. Makes it a little bit more personal. There we go. Right. Wave your hand or just speak if you've got a question for Alan, please. Who's going to start?
I was wondering about the little bit down to Calne.
Right. What about it, sir?
Well, it looks as though it's been restored, but it hasn't, has it? Not.
Yes. I'm just going to actually share my screen again, if I may, because what I want to do is to bring in Google Map, which will, sorry, my mouse is playing up, which will allow me to show you what we've got down there. So again, if I just bring in Google Map here. So the canal, we're talking about Pewsham earlier, that's obviously, this is Chippenham here. I can just zoom in here. Where are we? London Road. So this is the Pewsham, for those of you who know that stretch, a lovely little walk down there by the canal. That's the stretch we've restored. And you can see the canal, see the line of the canal going through there, across the London Road there by the Honda garage. This is the Stanley Road, sorry. And then here you got the River Marden. And this is the aqueduct that collapsed. And then we come up to this point here, where we have the branch of the canal. Going up to the left there is the main line going on to Swindon and Abingdon. Going to the right here, you can see it says Old Canal there. And if we follow that through, it basically follows the line of the river all the way through here. I hope everybody can see this all right. And then follows it through down here, sorry, through the sewer works, and there it goes through. Sorry, I was going to zoom out because I'm losing my bearings a little bit here.
Like a drone flight.
Yeah. Oh, there it goes. It's hiding from me. Yeah. It comes through there, and then comes in. Just about see the groove of it through there. So to answer your question, let me just lose that. To answer your question, we are intending restoring the whole canal, and that includes some of the branches. There was a branch into Chippenham, for instance. We can't restore that one. We're planning on building a new one there, but there's certainly the branch into Calne, that is very much a plan to restore that fully. As you've seen, there are parts of it which have been restored, and again we have this problem of ownership of the land. We can't just go wading in and start digging. Right. We have to get permission from the landowners first.
Okay, John Harris, question.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Has anybody in recent years looked at the tunnel which goes underneath the A4 and out onto Castle Fields as to what sort of state it's in?
No. It's a problem we've got to solve at some stage. And again, I go back to this, at what stage do we start doing things? Once we've got to that point, we are a charity. We've got a limited resources, so we tend to focus our resources on where we can use them profitably. So we won't look at that until such time as we are in a position to be able to use the tunnel effectively. But I do understand that there's been different debates as to what state it's in, but it's certainly, we have engineering solutions to every problem. For instance, the M4, for instance, there's a fairly major crossing point there, but we can overcome that.
Where you get a landowner that says, no, you're not, definitely nothing, that I don't want you near my piece of the canal as such, and you say you have an engineering solution, what sort of solution is it? Go round it or what?
Yeah, there are various options we got, but we would always look to negotiate with a landowner it's far better to work with people rather than against them, and so we'd always try and negotiate with landowners. And in some cases, it's simply a case of we've upset them with our talking to them and a different approach. Some people just do not want it, full stop. So we would look to find a solution, and in many cases that would be to go around it. For instance, Melksham and Swindon, we cannot restore the canals as they were through the middle of those two towns. So the engineering solution is to bypass them.
Okay. Isabel, you were waving your hand. Would you like to ask a question?
Yes, I would. Alan, thank you very much indeed. Very interesting.
Pleasure. Thank you.
You mentioned the branch off into Chippenham.
Yes.
And I think I might have spotted that on the map you showed us, not the Google Maps, but the other illustrative map. So I'd be grateful if you confirm that was what it was, going from somewhere along Stanley Lane, I suspect.
No, that is the plan. The actual original branch. If I go out of my front door and turn left and walk about 40 yards, it's down there. It basically follows the line of the Pewsham bypass around Chippenham.
What, Avenue de la Flèche?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then goes kind of under the Magistrates' Court.
Right.
And then ended up under what is now the bus station. So again, we can't restore that because the building, Pewsham Estate has been built on it, and so we can't restore that. But we are there is serious planning to build a new canal, a new line of canal from. Again, you've spotted it by the railway line there, Stanley Lane, and kind of following the railway line all the way down into the river, which was something that never happened with the original canal. As I said, it stopped under what is the the bus station in Chippenham, and so it never got down to the river. But the idea is that will happen.
If we sort of go back to the beginning of the canal, do we know what particular engineering challenges they faced when they were trying to build it originally?
Money, water supply. They didn't have the problem of negotiating with owners because in those days you got the Act of Parliament, and that was basically planning permission and compulsory purchase order. So they didn't have that problem as we do these days. And then standard construction problems, like for instance down at Pewsham, they if you know the canal at Pewsham, so that's the stretch just walking down from the locks. Run down it there, it's about a mile of canal that was cut into a bank, and they did have problems where the bank was slipping, and so they had to reinforce it on several occasions, like that. So
one of the things that I was always understood was that they actually built a series of brick factories, if you like.
Yes.
Along the line. Is that true, and how many did they build, and B, was that a normal practice?
Yes, it is true. I can't remember how many exactly they built, but several, I think about half a dozen. There was one actually down at Pewsham, and what we've got at Pewsham is 3 locks, a lockkeeper's cottage, a dry dock, a carpenter's workshop, a lime kiln, and a saw pit. And the lime kiln was basically where they made bricks. And the reason for that was quite simple. They needed to get bricks to site. A lock contains hundreds of thousands of bricks. And so the easiest thing was to make them on site. The clay was local, so it was easiest just to build them on site, and a lot cheaper.
Yeah. We were talking earlier, we had a meeting of the steering group. We were talking earlier that apparently in Foxham there was a kiln built there, and a pop-up pub and other leisure facilities were built on there to keep the navvies happy.
Yeah, keep the navvies happy, and quite probably to keep them out of the other locals, because navvies had a reputation for being rather disruptive. They were quite they could tend to get a bit rowdy after a day's work. You know, they worked hard, those guys. You know, I've dug some of that clay down at Petersham. It's hard work. We use modern equipment, and those guys, they just used picks and shovels and wheelbarrows, and they just went and enjoyed themselves in drinking beer.
First.
Yeah, and we all know what happens when you have too many of those.
Any other questions from the audience?
Yeah, it's Richard Tucker, if I may
Hello,
ask.
Richard.
Hello, everyone. Alan, the canals, excuse my ignorance, but will they take 2 narrow boats adrift, if you like?
Right. So basically, the Kennet and Avon is a wide canal, which can take wide boats. The Wilts Berks Canal is a narrow canal, so it can only take narrow boats. So that's boats about 6 foot wide, whereas the Kennet and Avon, so it will take them about 12 foot wide. What that means is it's the locks and bridges that are the narrow parts. The canal itself, and again, if you go down to Petersham, you'll see this, is wide enough to take 2 boats side by side going in opposite directions, but it's when they come to the locks and bridges that they have to go in single file.
But generally, you could put 2 side by side for most of the length.
If you're not going through a bridge, double bridge, for instance, at the bottom of the Petersham stretch, that's you see that is narrow, 6'6" wide, so it's just wide enough for 1 narrow boat. The same with the locks, but yeah, if between the bridge and the locks, yes, you could get 2 alongside each other.
Now, the reason for my question is that the landowners who are not prepared to let you develop or restore that length of canal, could they be offered a mooring on the basis that they might use it for holidays and tourism?
Absolutely, yeah, we would be prepared to negotiate them. And in fact, that's one of the, when landowners come to us and say, I don't want a canal going through my land, what's it going to give to me? Well, we would construct stock-proof fencing to stop the stock getting through. You're then generating a waterway, so there's nature reserve. You've got water there for your stock if you wanted it to water the cows and so on. And you've got that facility to build a cafe or whatever, a B&B, or whatever you wanted to for the benefit of the landowner. So yes, absolutely, that could be done. And obviously, if a landowner was doing that, they could work with us, and we could make the canal a little bit wider to provide that moorings. In some cases, as is planned down at Melksham, right down at Semmington, at the junction with the Calne, it's actually planned to go one stage further than that and build a marina. Okay. So, not suggesting landowners would necessarily want a marina in their field, but it's a possibility.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. I see we've got Louise and John on. Louise, is there anything from your research as part of the project that you think's noteworthy, or any questions that remain unanswered from what you've researched so far in relation to the canal?
No, I don't think so presently, but Alan's presentation has been really interesting and insightful to me, so thank you very much.
Good.
Pleasure, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Robert, you'd like to ask a question, I guess.
Yes, thank you very much. Alan, where did the navvies come from? Were they Irish, or were they just local lads from around here? Or
a lot of them were Irish, yeah. Yeah, they tended.
Was it in terms of the day, was it very well paid?
Not particularly. I don't know how you define well paid. I think they got paid a wage which was adequate for the job, but it's not. Bearing in mind they were away from home for months on end, and they did work hard. You can argue that perhaps they should have got paid more, but
So the local lads from around here wouldn't necessarily have joined in.
Not necessarily. I think it was a fairly close-knit society, and so the local lads probably, it would probably be a bit frowned upon for them to join in, simply because, you know, it's such a different society almost.
Thank you.
It must have had a, you know, really quite striking impact upon a very quiet rural community. If you think about what Bremhill would have been like in 1800, to have a, you know, a huge construction project running through it with a bunch of thirsty, overexcitable navvies there. So, I'm sure there was some incidents.
One or two.
Could I just, sorry, Louise, you go.
No, I was just going to say I haven't seen any evidence of any particular incidents, and I suspect that people like the Reverend William Lyle Bowles would have been pretty on point in trying to keep his parishioners separate from the navvies.
Yeah, or it was just resolved locally, perhaps, Louise.
Possibly.
John?
I think there was certainly a degree of that.
Yeah. John, sorry, you were going to say something.
Well, as Alan, and I'd like to thank Alan too, I think it was very interesting. But as Alan was speaking about the restoration, I was thinking of the bit in the middle of Swindon where it goes under a multi-storey car park and then along the main shopping street. But I'm also aware that there are various plans in Swindon for the sort of heritage action area, and I trust that you're getting the cooperation of Swindon Council to try and make a feature of the canal and cherish it rather than, as they did before, fill it in. And,
Not as much as we would like.
Right.
Bearing in mind, you've hit on it that a canal is a massive benefit to a town like Swindon, and they're not perhaps helping us as much as we'd like them to.
Okay.
Right. If there aren't any more questions, I will thank Alan very much for his talk, which was most informative and has provoked lots of interesting discussion. Just remind everybody that we've got 3 more talks Saturday night and 2 on Sunday night. And of course, we've got the History Trail, which is operative from 9 o'clock tomorrow morning till 7 in the evening, Saturday and Sunday. 12 locations around the parish, including the Wilts Berks Canal lock at Foxham, with information there, and the new app, which you can download from Bremhill Parish History.com, and you'll get a lot more information about all the sites there. So I'd really encourage you to get out and about, and please share that with everybody who might be interested. David.
Could I say a quick word, please? Excellent presentation. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
I have been asked by somebody in Bremhill if I can get a recording of it because they don't have a computer. So I did mention it to you, Craig. Are you
it is recorded, David? Yeah.
So I can get a copy sometime this weekend.
Or we'll put it on YouTube. Yeah, we'll make it accessible.
Well, I can. This person hasn't got a computer, so I said I'd try and get it on a memory stick so that they can watch it on their television.
All right, we'll see what we can do. Sally, were you waving your hand at that?
Thank you, Martin.
No, that was just a hand clap gesture.
Oh, a hand clap, very good. All right.
Yeah, but I did have a really quick question. I noticed on Sunday the talks are scheduled at 6 p.m. and 6:30.
Yeah.
Are they basically back to back?
Yeah. So
okay.
it'll just run. They'll run into each other.
Yeah, I just wanted to check that. Thanks. Yeah, no, that was a Zoom hand clap.
Okay, sorry.
Appreciate it.
Well, let's all do a real hand clap then. But thanks, Alan, for his time. And very good to see you all, and look forward to seeing you over the rest of the weekend. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.